Okay, welcome back. Today we are really digging into something pretty significant. It's this nexus of global security, international trade, focusing on a recent executive order from Washington.
That's right. We're looking closely at Executive Order 14175. It was signed January 22nd, 2025, and it basically sets the wheels in motion to designate Ansar Allah, who most people know as the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization, an FTO.
Yeah, and our goal here for you listening is to get past just the headlines. We want to unpack
Yeah.
the actual mechanics of how this designation works.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the history of the Houthis, which is complicated to say the least, and then really understand the real world effects, particularly what this FTO label could mean for humanitarian aid in Yemen. It's already a dire situation.
Absolutely. So starting with the mechanics, the EO itself doesn't immediately make them an FTO. What it does is trigger a specific legally mandated process. It forces the government's hand, really, following Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act.
Right, so it starts a clock ticking. You mentioned a timeline. What does that look like? It seems like there's some urgency built in.
Oh, definitely. It's a very tight schedule, designed for speed. The EO says the Secretary of State has just 30 days, 30 from the signing date, to give a report to the president.
And that report isn't simple, is it? Needs input.
Exactly. They have to consult with the Director of National Intelligence and the Secretary of the Treasury first. Then, once that report is submitted, the Secretary of State has only another 15 days to actually take action on the FTO designation itself.
So 45 days total. That is fast for this kind of thing. It really underscores the seriousness, doesn't it?
It does, and it shows this is a priority.
And, reading Section 2 of EEO, it's not just about legal steps or sanctions. It lays out a pretty explicit strategic policy goal. It says the U.S. policy is to work with partners to, quote, eliminate Ansar Allah's capabilities and operations, stop their funding, and end these attacks.
Right.
Specifically calls out attacks on U.S. personnel, partners, and crucially, maritime shipping in the Red Sea.
Yeah, it's framed as a strategic tool for counterterrorism. And the why now is clearly tied to recent events, these high-profile actions.
Okay, so let's shift there, from the how to the why. What specific actions, what threats does the EO actually cite as the justification for pushing for this full FTO designation again?
Well, the document builds a case based on several persistent threats. First, it points to Iranian support, specifically the IRGC's Quds force providing weapons and training.
That connection is always highlighted.
Then there's direct confrontation. It mentions the Houthis firing at U.S. Navy warships dozens of times since 2023. That puts American lives at risk, obviously.
And beyond the U.S. military, their actions have had a wider regional impact, right? Using some pretty sophisticated stuff.
Absolutely. Since they took over major population centers back in, 2014, 2015, the EO notes attacks on civilian infrastructure like airports in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Those January 2022 attacks in the UAE.
Right, I remember those.
And it explicitly links their actions to the Gaza conflict, citing over 300 projectiles fired towards Israel since October 2023.
But the one with the biggest global ripple effect, probably the one most people feel indirectly, is the disruption to shipping.
That's definitely the major economic driver here. The EO lists over 100 attacks on commercial ships in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Tragically, at least 4 civilian sailors killed.
It's awful.
And the consequence, massive rerouting of global trade away from the Red Sea. The EO directly states this has contributed to global inflation, so it connects their actions right to your wallet, essentially.
And this isn't just sticks and stones, is it? Where are they getting this capability?
That's a key point the sources raise. It's not just Iran. There are allegations of connections to North Korea for technology, possibly even Russia, providing geospatial intelligence like targeting data for ships.
Wow.
And the U.S. has already sanctioned companies based in China for supplying dual-use components, stuff needed for their missiles and drones. So it really makes them, a player in these larger global power struggles, not just a local Yemeni group.
Which makes the policy response even trickier. And speaking of tricky, this whole FTO designation thing, it's not new for the Houthis, is it? There's a history here.
Oh, absolutely. A very back-and-forth history. It reflects this constant struggle trying to balance security concerns with the humanitarian crisis in Yemen.
So walk us through that timeline.
Okay, so near the end of the first Trump presidency, they were hit with both designations FTO and also specially designated global terrorist or SDGT.
2 labels.
Right. But then Very early in the Biden administration, 2021, they reversed both of those. And the stated reason was explicitly humanitarian, recognizing the, quote, dire humanitarian situation in Yemen.
That was a big deal at the time, a clear signal prioritizing aid access.
It was. But things changed again with the escalation in Red Sea attacks. So January 2024, the Biden team partially brought back the terror status. They reimposed the SDGT designation.
Okay, just SDGT, not FTO. What's the actual difference? Why does that distinction matter so much, especially for people on the ground?
It matters hugely, particularly for aid organizations.
Yeah.
SDGT is mainly about financial sanctions, blocking assets, making it hard for the designated group or individuals to use the international financial system.
Right, cutting off the money.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
FTO, that's much broader, much stricter. It makes it a crime to provide any material support to the group. And material support can be interpreted very widely: logistics, tech, money, even services.
Ah, I see. So that makes it incredibly risky for NGOs, anyone really, trying to operate in Houthi-controlled areas, because almost anything could potentially be seen as support.
Precisely. That's why the original FTO designation was so controversial and why lifting it was focused on aid. Now, this new EO, 4D175, is aiming to bring back that full, much more restrictive FTO status.
And the timing.
Hmm.
The sources note this EO was signed January 22nd, 2025. That was apparently just hours after the Houthis released the crew of that cargo ship they seized, the Galaxy Leader. That release was linked to a Gaza ceasefire.
Yeah, that timing is interesting, isn't it? It highlights this constant dynamic diplomatic moves happening alongside escalatory pressure. It's less a fixed policy, maybe, and more about leverage.
Definitely seems like it. And to understand who the U.S. is applying this pressure to, we should touch on their identity. They didn't just appear out of nowhere.
No, they emerged from this Zaidi Shia revivalist movement. Politically, they frame themselves as opposing corruption, Western influence. Their slogan is notorious, of course. God is the greatest. Death to America, death to Israel, curse be upon the Jews, victory to Islam. Gives you a sense of the ideology.
Right. Which brings us back to that humanitarian tightrope. How does this EO, aiming for the full FTO designation, try to address the fact that this group controls areas where millions of people need aid?
This is where Section 3 of the EO gets really specific, focusing on accountability for aid groups. It mandates that if the FTO designation goes through, the Secretary of State and the head of USAID have to conduct a joint review.
A review of whom?
Of all UN partners, NGOs, contractors, anyone working with USAID funding in Yemen.
So basically an audit of the entire aid apparatus receiving U.S. funds there. What are they looking for in this review?
Two main things. They need to identify any organization that has either, one, made payments to Houthi members or entities they control, which could be tricky, like paying local taxes or fees, or two, any group that has criticized international counter-Houthi efforts without also, in the U.S. government's view, sufficiently documenting the Houthis' own human rights abuses.
Wow. That second one sounds subjective. It puts aid groups in a really tough spot, scrutinizing not just their finances, but their public statements and reporting, too, while they're trying to operate in a war zone.
It's a significant requirement. And if an organization gets flagged in this review,
what happens then?
The USAID administrator is directed to take appropriate action to terminate their grants or contracts. The clear intent is to cut off any potential flow of resources, direct or indirect, to the Houthis.
And this intense scrutiny, it connects back to long-standing issues with aid delivery in Yemen, doesn't it? There have been accusations against the Houthis themselves related to aid and human rights.
Yes, that's the essential context here. Aid delivery is incredibly complicated because of the Houthis' actions. There are widespread accusations of severe human rights violations.
Like what, specifically?
Things like using child soldiers reports mention kids as young as 7, shelling civilian areas, hostage-taking, and critically for aid, the World Food Program has accused them of diverting food aid, selling donated rations on the black market instead of giving them to hungry people.
That diversion issue is huge if aid isn't getting to the people who need it.
Exactly. And the abuses go beyond warfare and aid. Sources document harassment and persecution of religious minorities, like Jewish and Baha'i communities. And there are disturbing reports about their female police wing, the Zainabiyat, being involved in the abuse and even torture of women and girls in detention centers. These documented actions form the backdrop for why the EO includes such strict controls on aid partners.
So wrapping this up, what we've really unpacked here is this fundamental tension, right?
Absolutely. It's crystal clear in EO 13175. On one hand, you have urgent security needs, protecting shipping, protecting personnel. On the other, you have the potentially devastating humanitarian consequences of restricting aid flow into areas controlled by the group you're targeting. A classic dilemma.
Yeah, a dilemma amplified, because this isn't just about sanctions versus aid on the ground. It's also, as the sources point out, an information war. The Houthis have apparently been very effective using media, even traditional poetry, these zawamil, as propaganda.
Using culture itself as a tool for recruitment and influence. Very powerful.
So that leads us to our final thought for you, the listener, something to chew on. How do you effectively counter a group like this, when their ideology isn't just allegedly backed by powerful states like Iran, but it's also deeply woven into local culture, turning things like poetry into actual weapons of war?
It's a profound challenge that goes way beyond just military or economic measures, something to think about long after the policy debates fade.
The tough question prompted by a very tough policy decision. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Executive Order 14175. We'll catch you next time.